In the Middle Ages, the Huns were moving into Europe, bringing war and destruction everywhere. The Kingdom of Burgundy was struggling to survive. The king and his men went out to protect the borders, moving carefully through thick fog. When they reached a village, they found it burned down. Everyone and every animal was dead. Suddenly, a horse appeared, hiding an enemy soldier. The soldier shot an arrow at the king and escaped before anyone could catch him. Marshal Hagen ran to help the king, but it was too late, he was already dead. Later, the king's funeral was held in the capital. Soon, Prince Gunnar became the new king. Since enemies surrounded the kingdom, he wanted allies. He decided his sister Kriemhild should marry the king of Lombardy. Hagen told her the news, and although it made her sad, she agreed to do her duty. That night during a storm, 11 armed men were seen near the gates. Hagen went to check and heard a shadow whisper, "I know your scars," before vanishing. The next morning, the group entered the gates and were quickly surrounded. From afar, Kriemhild noticed one of the strangers change his face. Gunnar met their leader, who introduced himself as Seigfried, Prince of Cassentin. Their fathers had once been allies. To everyone's shock, Seigfried challenged Gunnar to a duel, but the guards stopped him. Instead, he stayed as a guest. Later, Kriemhild told Hagen what she saw and worried the strangers were tied to the Old Ones, evil beings that haunted dreams. She thought her brother should have sent them away. That night, Hagen followed a cloaked figure through town, but when he grabbed him, the figure turned into a pile of bags. Meanwhile, Seigfried, drunk from too much wine, stumbled outside. Hagen warned him to leave the kingdom. That night, Hagen dreamed of the cloaked figure in the stables, covered in blood. The figure said he knew Hagen's scars and reminded him of the dragon attack that had killed his parents. The next morning, servants reported seeing the cloaked man in the stables, and some horses were found dead. Kriemhild tried to calm her beloved horse, but it broke free and ran away. She and Hagen chased it through the forest. When Kriemhild tried to pet the horse by the river, it panicked and hurt her hand before escaping again. Hagen cared for her wound, and she admitted she wasn't happy about her arranged marriage. Later, Siegfried told Gunnar that the Valkyrie Queen Brunhild had called him in a dream. She was said to control men with her spells. Siegfried then laughed, saying it was just a joke, and complained about the lack of women. That evening, he barged into Kriemhild's room and called her beautiful, but she pushed him away, saying he was a lost soul. Meanwhile, Hagen told Gunnar the marriage was a bad idea, assuring him their army was strong enough. Gunnar agreed to cancel the marriage. He also admitted Siegfried's story didn't sound like a lie. The next morning, Gunnar told Kriemhild she didn't have to marry, and she hugged him with joy. The queen, however, reminded Hagen that her daughter had been ready to sacrifice for the kingdom and asked if Hagen could do the same. Later, during training, Siegfried and his men fought like wild brawlers. Siegfried even beat one of his own men too hard, laughing like a madman. Then he asked for a new opponent, so Hagen stepped forward. When Siegfried threw a spear, Hagen caught it with ease. He told Siegfried that this was real war training, not a game. Suddenly, a rider arrived with a dead man from a border village. He had been stabbed to death. Soon after, news came that the Saxons and the Danes had turned against Burgundy. The capital was safe for now, but the rest of the kingdom would burn. Desperate, Gunnar told Hagen to ally with Siegfried's group, even though Hagen didn't trust them. That night, Hagen saw the cloaked figure again and found strange ritual items. The figure revealed himself as Albert. He told Hagen that Siegfried had once fought a dragon and killed it. After bathing in its blood, he became invincible except for one spot on his back where a leaf had blocked the blood. That was his only weakness. Albert was making a sword from the dragon's bones to kill him. He warned Hagen that Siegfried wanted a family, and now he had found one in Burgundy. Meanwhile, Siegfried entered the chapel where Gunnar was praying. He placed his sword in Gunnar's hand, saying he would kill for him. When Hagen came, he found Gunnar declaring Siegfried their new ally. Later, Hagen went to Kriemhild to say goodbye before leaving for war. She asked why he had saved her from marriage when the kingdom needed allies. Hagen gave no answer. Kriemhild tried to talk about her feelings for Hagen, but he said he only acted to protect the kingdom. She told him their home would never truly be safe. The next day, the army marched to war. That night while camping, Hagen discussed battle plans. He explained that the Saxons and Danes were brave but lacked discipline, so their army should use that weakness against them. In the middle of the night, Siegfried rode out alone and attacked the enemy. By morning, he returned with the severed head of the Saxon king. He told the others the Saxons were now leaderless and chaotic, so they had to strike quickly. Fired up by his words, the army followed Siegfried into battle, ignoring Hagen's warnings. A fierce fight broke out in the forest. Hagen fought bravely, cutting down any foe near him, but his main concern was protecting his king. Siegfried fought without armor, killing enemies fearlessly, which amazed everyone. When a young soldier lost his helmet, Hagen rushed in, saved him, and gave him his own. The battle raged on. Hagen tried to protect his best archer, but while he was distracted, enemies surrounded him. He could only watch as the archer was stabbed to death. In that moment, Hagen was struck in the face and lost his left eye. He killed his attacker but collapsed soon after. The Dane king closed in to finish him, but Seigfried jumped in and killed the king first. Hagen then passed out. When the army returned to the capital, the crowd cheered Siegfried's name, praising him as their hero. He basked in the glory while Kriemhild stayed behind, tending to the unconscious Hagen. Feeling angry, she later found Siegfried drinking and scolded him for disturbing the mourning of the fallen. Siegfried told her death was part of war. Fallen warriors should be celebrated, not mourned in silence. When Kriemhild said Hagen might die, Siegfried replied that Albert could heal him. Soon after, Albert treated Hagen's wounds, drawing a strange symbol on his body. He also revealed a shocking truth. Hagen's childhood story was a lie. He wasn't saved from a beast. His home kingdom had been conquered by Gunnar's father. His parents were killed and Hagen had been trapped in fire. A dragon had carried him away, leaving scars. Later, the king used the dragon as a cover story to hide the truth. When Hagen finally woke up, he visited the graves of the fallen soldiers. Siegfried told him he had no regrets. Later in the throne room, Kriemhild spoke with Siegfried. He explained that empires always collapse, which was why he never wanted his father's throne. Kriemhild was surprised to see he had no desire for power. While Kriemhild changed Hagen's bandages, she admitted she was thankful to Siegfried for saving his life. Hagen, however, thought Siegfried was giving people false hope. Kriemhild argued that even false hope might be better than none. Hagen was heartbroken as he watched her spend more and more time with Siegfried. One morning, Kriemhild and Siegfried rode into the forest and stopped at the ruins of old wars. Kriemhild asked why Albert followed him. Siegfried explained he had once killed Albert's master. Then he told her about the dragon, how he had been sent to learn discipline as a blacksmith's apprentice, but his master sent him away, hoping he wouldn't return. After weeks of wandering, Siegfried found a dragon sleeping peacefully and thought it was the most beautiful sight of his life. Kriemhild asked why he killed it, but he gave no answer. On their way back, Kriemhild heard a voice calling her name. She turned and saw her father's body covered in vines. Terrified, she ran away. When Siegfried caught up, she admitted she was starting to forget her father's face. She remembered how he had once tried to sell her to a stranger, and for a time she had hated him. She broke down crying and Siegfried comforted her. They grew close and ended up sharing a night together. But later, Siegfried had a nightmare and almost killed Kriemhild in his sleep. Meanwhile, the Huns, led by their warlord Zell, continued marching west, destroying everything in their path. Gunnar soon learned that Lombardy had fallen. Desperate for allies, he remembered Siegfried's story and decided they needed to contact Queen Brunhild of Iceland. When Hagen heard this, he was troubled. Brunhild was one of the Old Ones, known for her dark magic. Gunnar claimed she had spoken to him in dreams. Believing this was a trick, Gunnar locked Albert away. Hagen went to see him and promised freedom if he revealed more about Brunhild. Albert explained that Brunhild was invincible and that Siegfried had once been enchanted by her. She had called to him in his dreams and he had gone to her. They spent a year together until Siegfried vanished without a word, breaking her heart. Albert believed Siegfried still loved her. But when Hagen opened the cell, Albert was already gone. The next day, Hagen warned Kriemhild not to trust Siegfried. But she ignored him and announced she would marry Siegfried to protect the kingdom. Worried, Hagen told Gunnar, who agreed to the marriage but added a condition. During dinner, he gave the couple his blessing but demanded Siegfried take him to Iceland so Gunnar could ask Brunhild to marry him, making the Valkyries their allies too. Siegfried was furious but had no choice. Soon after, Gunnar and his men set sail on a ship toward Iceland. The first few days of sailing are calm, but soon the cold gives them trouble. One night, a storm strikes and the crew struggles to keep the ship under control while Siegfried laughs. The ship crashes into rocks and several men fall into the water, including Gunnar. Hagen jumps in to save his king. By morning, Hagen reaches the shore and finds the bodies of his friends. Thankfully, Gunnar is alive and they reunite with a hug. Soon they find Siegfried and a few survivors, continuing their journey on foot. After days of walking, they reach a foggy land. Remembering the old rules, Siegfried makes everyone put down their weapons. Soldiers surround them and Siegfried asks General Senua to take him to the queen. The group is tied up and taken to a castle under a volcano. Locals yell and beat them before putting bags over their heads. When Hagen wakes, he's in a big room with Senua, who explains that Gunnar must defeat the queen in battle to win her hand. Skulls of past challengers lie in a pile nearby. Hagen is later allowed to see Gunnar, who carries a sword given by the queen. Gunnar says she isn't like the stories and that he must fight her. Meanwhile, Siegfried is visited by Queen Brunhild, who also gives him a sword. He swears he only came as a guide, but Brunhild reminds him he still came. Later, Hagen scolds Siegfried for not warning them about the rules. Hagen wants to leave, but Gunnar insists on staying. Even Siegfried protests, saying he himself can't defeat Brunhild, but Gunnar won't change his mind. Siegfried then calls Alberich for help. In a cave, Alberich cuts Siegfried's weak spot to take his blood. Hagen and Siegfried are held underwater while Gunnar drinks it. He writhes in pain but soon gains their strength. With this power, Gunnar is prepared for battle. Senua warns him if his blood touches the snow, the queen will take his head. If hers does, she must leave with him. The fight begins and Brunhild proves to be a mighty warrior. She knocks off his helmet and pushes him hard, but Gunnar surprises her with his strength and skill. After many clashes, blood finally falls on the snow, but it's from Brunhild's leg. Gunnar releases the borrowed power, reviving Hagen and Seigfried in the cave. Brunhild and her army kneel, keeping their promise. Tearfully, Brunhild says goodbye to her land. Back in Burgundy, Gunnar learns his army has failed to hold the borders. The Huns have destroyed much of the kingdom and soldiers are deserting. A double wedding is held. Seigfried happily marries Kriemhild, while Brunhild and Gunnar seem cold. Brunhild crowns herself instead of letting the priest do it. Later, frustrated, she attacks Seigfried in front of the army before screaming in rage. On the eve of battle, Hagen sees his men fearful. He gives them a speech telling them to trust the queen. At dawn, Brunhild's volcano erupts and the soldiers see it as a good sign. Brunhild charges first and her army follows. The battle is brutal, but her leadership drives them to victory, forcing their enemies to retreat. That night, a great celebration is held. Brunhild dances too closely with Seigfried and Hagen notices. The next morning, Hagen warns Seigfried to stay loyal to Kriemhild once they return. Seigfried promises but still flirts openly with Brunhild. Weeks later, Seigfried grows restless and asks Kriemhild to run away, but she refuses. She later shares a quiet moment with Hagen, who admits he never married because duty came first. As the kingdom rebuilds, Seigfried helps, but Gunnar grows jealous that the people admire him more. He also notices Brunhild's affection for Seigfried and asks Hagen for the truth, but Hagen denies it. Tensions rise when Seigfried insults a councilman, and Gunnar angrily reminds him he isn't true family. One night, Gunnar follows Brunhild and discovers her secret meetings with Seigfried. Afraid of losing everything, Gunnar asks Hagen to protect the kingdom. Hagen agrees. Later, Seigfried apologizes to Kriemhild but keeps drinking and fighting. Hagen invites him hunting. They slay a white stag together, but Hagen asks for a fair duel instead of striking him secretly. They fight fiercely, trading blows and weapons. Hagen nearly drowns Seigfried, but Seigfried stabs his leg and wins. Before he can kill Hagen, Gunnar appears and fatally stabs Seigfried in his weak spot. Hagen covers for Gunnar, claiming he killed Seigfried in a duel. Kriemhild breaks down, revealing she is pregnant. Brunhild grieves in secret. At Seigfried's funeral, Hagen says he acted to protect the kingdom and accepts punishment. But instead of execution, Kriemhild curses him to live long enough to serve Seigfried's son, making his suffering greater than death. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories like this.